Chakshuanmilitam jena tasmai Sri Gurave Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Krishna Krishna
Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamaya Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauramani Pujaya Namaste Prasannavadi Prashakti Devi Shikara Om again Taminandasya Dhananjana Silakara Saksi Jamilitam Jana Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Caitanya Malavistam Sapitam Jana Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sakandantika Sakapataviyascha Kripasinda Payavata Patitanam Pavanero Reading from the 10th chapter of Madhya Lila, nearing the end of the 10th chapter of Madhya Lila, Caitanya Caritamrta. In this chapter, Mahaprabhu has just come back from his tour of South India. For 2 years he had been away, and his tour of South India is quite interesting. We already discussed it. I'm just, my mind is a bit on that because I'm just reading it and for the purpose of writing something about it nowadays. And I saw that that Mahaprabhu visits so many places. But what strikes me most about all the activities he did was that he was continuously internally absorbed. We are all continuously internally absorbed, basically. Everyone lives more on the mental, in the realm of the mind more than on the realm of the body even. But Mahaprabhu was showing Caitanya Caritamrta, which means the activities of the eternal soul, the Chaitanya, in the realm of eternity. So Mahaprabhu not living on the bodily platform, and not living, of course, this is how he's acting as a devotee, Supreme Lord acting as a devotee, teaching, but not living on the mental platform either. The mental platform means the platform of imagining this is going to happen, imagining only if I had that, imagining what it's going to be like tomorrow, imagining what could have happened yesterday, or if only I had done this, and then anticipating the happiness when we get something. When I've heard Prabhupada say that material happiness, or the sense gratification, it's a mental speculation. And it took me a long time to pierce through what he meant by that. Because the senses, when they contact the objects of the senses, there's a happiness in that, but it's so advanta, it has such a beginning and an end. But the real happiness is, the greater happiness is the anticipation. Oh, when I get this, then this will happen, and then I'll feel happy. And the whole advertising industry is based on increasing our anticipation that this is going to happen. And it seems like the whole news industry, the media is pointed to getting everyone fearful that, oh, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And all this type of anxieties, they exist on the mental platform. The happiness exists on the mental platform. The misery mostly exists on the mental platform. Years and years ago, when we first went to Vrindavan, I guess I was a lot younger then, obviously. It was 1983. And I had this experience of we were staying at the Goshala at one point. And in the Goshala, there was only a tap of water for bathing, and I was outside. And guess what season it was that I'm thinking about? Guess. You got it. It was winter. And there's nothing more exciting than bathing outside at 4 in the morning or so in the winter with just no hot water or anything like that. So as soon as you think, oh, now I have to get up and bathe, you just want to put more blankets on top of you or something. But then you go like this with the water, you pour it on you, and you're happy that it's over, and it sort of feels good when it's over. But then at some point, I got off the mental platform about it, because I was doing it every day, and the mind only gets so much excitement out of fearing something every day. And then I just did it. I just took the lota, bathed, and it was so much less painful in that way, because the anxiety, the pain was mostly on the mind. It wasn't in the cold water hitting the body. So therefore, Krishna actually tells Arjuna this in the Bhagavad Gita, tams titikshasva bharata, that we tolerate things. And this is one of the essential elements of the Vedic Indian culture. There's so much tolerance built into it, or at least there was. And the Western culture is just the opposite. You're not supposed to have to tolerate anything. Everything has to be organized so everything works smoothly, just for your benefit. As soon as you get to the train station, the train has to arrive. As soon as you get to everything, otherwise, something's wrong if everything isn't organized just for my pleasure. And of course, that causes so much anxiety, because the reality is nothing is really organized for our pleasure. And if everything was organized for my pleasure, what's going to happen to poor Braj Mohan? He's going to be left out completely. So in any case, when Mahaprabhu returned from his South India tour, he was still always so internally, spiritually absorbed. He acted on the, and Prabhupada was very much internally, spiritually absorbed completely. We really saw this. It's not that he didn't, one time in Japan in 1972, it was another cold day in Mangalarti, and Prabhupada was, I was fortunate when Prabhupada was there, I was there, and he was sitting on the Vyasasana, we're chanting Samsara, and the smoke is coming out of it. It was so cold because the windows in Japan in those days, they were made out of, do you know what they were made out of? I'll give you a hint, it wasn't glass. And I'll give you a hint, before there were computers, people used to write on it. Yep, paper. That's how they made the windows, out of paper. It was so cold. And Prabhupada was sitting on the Vyasasana, and we were all chanting, and Prabhupada just looked at me and said, "It's so cold, isn't it?" And we imagine that Prabhupada is sort of what it's such an exalted soul, like it's if he doesn't experience being in the material world, but he does experience being in the material world, or he did experience being in the world. In this world, but his experience is quite different from my experience when I'm identifying with the mind, identifying with the body. But he looked at me very sympathetically, said, "It is so cold, isn't it?" But the difference is, one of the differences, that he was there, he had traveled from some other place in the world just to be with the devotees in Asakawacho, in Japan. And he didn't let anything stop him because he was situated on a deeper level. And that is our great challenge in life, to get situated on a deeper level, to actually identify with that deeper level. Otherwise, if we are on the surface level of our Krishna consciousness, that every little, it's cold today, it's hot today, it's cold today, I get this, it's hot today, it's too hot, oh God, could you turn the thermostat down a little bit? We get knocked around by everything. So Mahaprabhu's internal level was so attractive. He was in ecstasy with internal absorption, in the mood of missing Krishna and fully depending on Krishna. So, do we miss Krishna? Do we fully depend on Krishna? Or do we depend upon our own abilities? And if we depend on our own abilities, one day, whatever tricks we use to avoid difficulty and to bring happiness, our concept of happiness, to us, we're going to be extremely disappointed. Extremely disappointed. Because our abilities are limited. No matter how able we are, our abilities are limited. And the material world, in case you haven't noticed, has unlimited ways, practically speaking, of frustrating our great desires. And ultimately, the thing that was so attached to, especially this body, one day, gone, and that will be. And if we are fully, if we identify, depending upon how much we identify with our body, and the mind, and all the things we're attached to, then it'll be a very disappointing day. So Mahaprabhu returned from his tour of South India, and all the devotees hadn't seen him for years, 2 years. And they were so excited, and one by one, the devotees in Jagannath Puri. They met Mahaprabhu, and quite a few devotees came from all over Bengal. And then in the next chapter, his close associates from Navadvip, Mayapur, they will come and meet him. But there's one main last person who is going to meet Mahaprabhu, and that's what we're up to in the 10th chapter. And last week we started speaking about him. This was a great sannyasi named Brahmananda Bharati. And he had come, and he was an associate, it seems, as far as I understand, perhaps a godbrother or some associate of Sri Kesava Bharati Maharaj, who was Mahaprabhu's sannyas guru. So when Mahaprabhu was informed that Kesava Bharati had come, he was going to come and see him, Mahaprabhu said, no, he is the one in the superior position. He shouldn't have to come and see me, I will go and see him. So Mahaprabhu went to see him, and Brahmananda Bharati, as we'll hear later in the chapter, he was a powerful impersonalist. What does it mean to be an impersonalist?
To not believe in the personal God.
Yes. What do you believe in?
That Krishna is a person.
No, not you person. No, sorry. It's just going to get confusing because I'll say, what do you personally believe in? But never mind.
Yeah.
So he was an impersonalist from his childhood, and he had been meditating on Brahman from his childhood, as opposed to toys and things like that. But ever since he was young, he was meditating on Brahman. He was fixed in meditation. And when he came to see Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri, he was wearing a deerskin, which, as it turned out, there was some prestige attached to wearing a deerskin. So when Mahaprabhu went to see him, he said, here's Kesava, the devotee who was with Mahaprabhu said, here's Kesava Bharati Maharaj. And Mahaprabhu said he didn't approve of the deerskin. Now he is the junior, and he had come to see him, Kesava Brahmananda Bharati, right? But when he came, he said, I don't see Brahmananda Bharati. Brahmananda Bharati wouldn't be wearing a deerskin because this was an impersonalist type of a dress, but it wasn't the proper dress for a sannyasi. So he said, I don't see Brahmananda Bharati. You say he's here, but I don't see him. And Brahmananda Bharati, being a subtle person, he understood that Mahaprabhu did not approve of his wearing the deerskin. And he, being a subtle person and an introspective person, what does introspective mean?
Thoughtful.
But not only thoughtful, but a little more. Because say if a person is thinking about the different planets in the universe all the time, he's thoughtful, but he's not necessarily introspective.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? So notice that this is revealing a teaching technique. When you ask a question to one person like that, probably everyone in their mind is answering that question, just in case I might call on you or something like that.
Introspective is more like personal and like reflection.
Self-reflective, thinking about your mind and what's going on in your mind, and you examine your own mind. And most people are so externally absorbed nowadays, and this is one of the, I would say, the tricks of modern society. Everyone is so busy just trying to maintain, so busy in answering their Facebook and Instagrams and and, well, one did I forget?
What's that?
Oh, yeah, how could I forget WhatsApp? And TikTok. Do you use TikTok, by the way? Do you? No. It's a very dangerous platform. So, so everyone is so externally absorbed, and the days pass, and the weeks pass, and the months pass, and time passes so quickly, and no one has any time alone to even think about what am I doing and what's the purpose of it all. I'm going to work every day, I'm doing this and that, I'm coming back, but what's the purpose of it all? What am I actually gaining from it all? What is to be gained from it all, from life? And do I want to be doing what I'm doing? Just working, and then some enjoyment, but then worrying about this and having to fill out that form and on and on and on and on. What is the purpose of it all? And do I want to be doing this? And what to speak of a question like, who am I actually? This person within who is me, is this me? Is the mind that is continuously fluctuating? Is that me? Is the intelligence me, or is the sense of who I am, the ahankara, is that me? And what is the purpose of it all? So that is the self-reflective, introspective mood of a thoughtful person. So there's a subtlety in such a person. So when Mahaprabhu, standing right in front of Brahmananda Bharati, said, I don't see Brahmananda Bharati. Where is Brahman? Brahmananda Bharati wouldn't be wearing a deer skin. And Brahmananda Bharati, being subtle and introspective, said, he's not approving of my dress. And now thinking about why I'm wearing it, this dress. I can understand I'm doing it because I want people to think that I'm very renounced and I'm a great yogi, and there's prestige involved in it for me. And I don't want that. And Mahaprabhu was pointing it out. So that's a whole other aspect. When you recognize that there's something going on in your consciousness that you don't want to be there, and why wouldn't you want it to be there? Because it's getting in the way of your upward movement to your actual goal in life, because an introspective person just doesn't live one day after the next. He's thinking, have a goal in life, a spiritual goal in life, at least to find out what is the goal in life. But someone like Brahmananda Bharati, he had a spiritual goal in his life, and he had been pursuing that goal ever since he was a young boy. And then Mahaprabhu, in a subtle, indirect way, pointed out to him a flaw, and he recognized it. So as soon as one recognizes a flaw, a mistake in one's consciousness, a mistake meaning something that we're doing, but it's not really what we want to do to get where we want to go, to get what we want, then the next and the greater challenge is to do something about it. That's even harder than recognizing, but to actually shift and stop doing it and place it with what we want to do that's going to help us move in the right direction towards our actual goal. That's even more difficult, but we should try our very best. So Mahaprabhu immediately arranged that some sannyas robes be brought to Brahmananda Bharati, and the exchange went on. And then, soon as he gave up his deerskin, the moment he gave up his deerskin and covered himself with sannyas robes, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu came and offered his respects at his lotus feet. immediately bowed down. And then Brahmananda Bharati said, you instruct the general populace by your behavior, by the way you're acting. You're instructing people in general without your words even. Just by your actions, you're instructing people in general. I will not do anything against your wishes. Now this is very interesting, what he says next. Otherwise, you will not offer me respect, but you will neglect me, and I am afraid of this. What was he afraid of? Being neglected. That's considered the worst of punishments by subtle people. Even, I think I mentioned this in a few classes ago, that when Varunadev and his servant had kidnapped Nanda Maharaj and brought him into the waters of the Jamuna, he said to Krishna, either punish me or forgive me, but don't neglect me. So even punishment is superior, he was thinking, than neglect. And usually we would prefer to be neglected than to be punished, because it's not fun, it's not pleasant to be chastised, to be punished. But the purpose of the punishment, when it's administered properly or the way that it should be seen, is that this is for my good. Like the father chastises the son. How old are you now, Brother Mark?
15.
And then he continued, and he shifts, because the mood shifts, and because remember, he's been an impersonalist his whole life, but yet he recognizes Mahaprabhu, who is in a junior position, a disciple of his godbrother Kesava Bharati Maharaj, but he's accepting chastisement from him, because this is Mahaprabhu's potency, whether it's said directly or not. Everyone, practically speaking, accepts him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this one, Brahmananda Bharati, was an impersonalist whose goal is to, impersonalism or the path of Sripad Shankaracharya, it's called Chanda Bhoga, which means it's covered Buddhism, where ultimately there's nothing, basically, at least in many of the different schools of Buddhism, especially that of Nagarjuna. He's seeing from the point of view of an impersonalist. And he says, at the present moment, I see two Brahmans. One Brahman is Lord Jagannath, who does not move, and the other Brahman is moving. Who is moving is you. So immediately, because his consciousness is subtle, he's recognized as Mahaprabhu as not different from Lord Jagannath. One Brahman does not move, and the other Brahman who is moving is you. Lord Jagannath is the Archa Vigraha, the worshipable deity, and it is he who is the non-moving Brahman. But you are Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and you are moving here and there. The two of you are the same Brahman, master of the material nature, but you are playing two parts. So there's one Brahman playing two parts, he says. So So it's not clear whether he's saying, because he's an impersonalist, or he's coming from an impersonalist background. So it's not clear whether he's saying that everyone is Brahman, that Lord Jagannath is Brahman and every jiva is Brahman. It's not clear yet. But you are playing two parts, one moving and non-moving. In this way, there are two Brahmans now residing in Jagannath Puri Purushottam. Of the two Brahmans, you are fair complexion, and the other, Lord Jagannath, who is right there, is blackish. Both of you are delivering the whole world. So he's immediately praising Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Lord. Has anyone ever seen that in amongst Mayavadi sannyasis? There's some in Vrindavan, and when they see each other, they offer respects by saying Namo Narayana. I offer my respects to Narayan when they see the sannyasi. Have you ever seen him? You? Me? Yes. Have you ever seen it? But they actually do it. So both, and he continues equating the Supreme Lord with Brahman. But Lord Caitanya replied, actually, to tell you the truth, due to your presence, there are now two Brahmans in Jagannath Puri. So Mahaprabhu turns it around. He says both Brahmananda and Gaurahari are moving, whereas the blackest Lord Jagannath is sitting tight and immobile. So he's saying that the two of us are jivas. Mahaprabhu isn't a jiva, jivatma, but he wants to make this distinction for those who have impersonalistic tendencies. Yes, everyone is Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi, but there's the little Brahman, the jiva, and the all-pervading Supreme Brahman, and they are eternally distinct. So both the impersonalists and the Buddhists, they have especially impersonalists, the followers of Sripad Shankaracharya, they have a philosophical problem. They see that there is one absolute truth. They understand that the absolute truth, by definition, is all-inclusive. There's nothing outside of it, but it's also unchangeable. It's a oneness in everything. And then they look at the material world and see that the material world is changing. And the philosophical problem they come up with is that the absolute truth, Brahman, there's no change in it. So therefore, the conclusion is that this material world is what?
Illusion.
Who said that? Yes, it's illusion. Now try to live your life in that way, thinking that this material world doesn't really exist. It's only it exists in your mind only. Now, talking about an impractical philosophy, there it is. That this material world is actually an illusion. Well, of course, what is our philosophy? It's illusory in the sense of we imagine it, it's always going to be like this. We imagine it, that things, and this is when you're young, in your childhood, you think life is always going to be this way, and if you maybe lived in one house when you're young, you think it's always going to be there, and then something happens with parents or grandparents, and then the illusion is shattered because you're thinking something that is temporary is eternal. And that's the difference between the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy and the impersonal. We say that it is illusory if we think things are eternal when they are temporary and shifting and always changing. But they're there, they're real. They're not asat in the sense of non-existent. So Mahaprabhu is subtly disagreeing with him on a point to defeat impersonalism. He says, yes, there are two Brahmans. You and I are jivas, one type of Brahman, and Lord Jagannath is the Supreme Lord. And Brahmananda Bharati said, my dear Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, so Brahmananda Bharati said there are two Brahmans, one is moving and non-moving. But they're both Brahman, they're both the Supreme Lord. And Caitanya Mahaprabhu says, yes, there are two Brahmans, us two and Lord Jagannath, and there's a difference between the Supreme Lord and the Jivas. So Brahmananda Bharati turned to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who is with him. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has, in the 6th chapter, this is the 10th chapter, he's had a complete change of consciousness. He was renowned in all of India as one of the greatest of scholars. He was famous throughout India about it. And Mahaprabhu had completely changed his consciousness from that great scholar being a scholar of Advaita, Vedanta, Mayavad philosophy of Sripad Shankaracharya. He changed him completely into a Vaishnava through the Vedanta Sutras and through revealing himself as the Supreme Lord. So Brahmananda Bharati, knowing that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was there, they were playfully arguing, two Brahmans, these two or that two are Brahmans. So Brahmananda Bharati said, my dear Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, please become the mediator in this logical argument between Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu and me. Nyaya, because he was the great professor of Nava Nyaya. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya he had opened a school and was in Navadvip to compete with the school in Matila historically. And then he was invited by Maharaj Prataparudra to teach in Jagannath Puri, and he came to Jagannath Puri. So he was known as the great professor of Nyaya, of logic. So he asked, in a playful way, Brahmananda Bharati asked Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was present, to mediate this debate. And Brahmananda Bharati continued, the living entity is localized, where the Supreme Brahman is all-pervading. That is the verdict of all revealed scriptures. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu purified me by taking away my deerskin. This is proof that he's all-pervading. So he's saying that it's proof that the Lord knows everything. He's everywhere. Because he knew what was in my heart. And he wanted to remove the pride, which is the covering over the actual soul, just like the deerskin, improper covering over the body. So he's all pervasive and all powerful, and I am subordinate to him. So he wanted to prove that the Supreme Lord, that Caitanya Mahaprabhu was the Supreme Lord, not different from Jagannath. And Mahaprabhu had wanted to make a distinction between the Mayavad philosophy and the Vaishnava philosophy. It's probably easier to follow if you're reading it, as opposed to just hearing it, because this part is a little. And then he quoted, because the nature of these great souls is when they would make philosophical statements, they would quote Shastra. So he quoted from the Mahabharata. And this is the Savana Vana Hemango. His bodily hue, this is from Mahabharata. His bodily hue, the color of his body is golden. And his whole body is like molten gold. Every part of his body is very beautifully constructed. This is perfectly describing Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and smeared with sandalwood pulp. Accepting the renounced order, the Lord is always equipoised. What does equipoise mean?
Like calm and not crazy.
Not crazy, neither overly happy or overly sad, steady in all circumstances. Because he's deep, he's acting on this with spiritual consciousness, so the ups and downs of, as we were speaking about before, of the material world don't disturb. So he's equipoised, always. He is firmly fixed in his mission of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, and he is firmly situated in his dualistic conclusion and his peace. Nishta, his bhakti. Shanta, nishta, shanta. He's peaceful and full of peace, and he's parayana, he's the highest person. So this is a verse from the Mahabharata that predicts the Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So all the symptoms mentioned in this verse from the Vishnu Sahasranam Stotra are visible in the body of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So he's trying to prove that Mahaprabhu is not different from Jagannath. His arms are decorated with sandalwood pulp, and the thread received from the Lord Jagannath, from Sri Jagannath deity. And these are his ornamental bangles. After hearing this, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya rendered his judgment, saying, because he knew that, because Mahaprabhu had revealed him, he had decided to show him mercy, because there were many reasons. He had decided to show Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya his mercy, because he ended up, he was so proud before of his great scholarship and of what he had done. There were reasons why he was proud, but everything is a gift of the Supreme Lord, so there's actually no reason to be proud, because as he's given, he can take away. It's a gift. What do you think about that? Everyone, without, you don't have to say it, but what are you proud of in yourself? You don't have to raise your hand or anything. But just think, introspect. What is it that you're proud of in yourself? Of course, some of us may not be proud of anything, understanding everything's a gift, but some of us may still have some lingering pride in something. But Krishna can take whatever it is that you have, that you think, I'm better than others because I have this. He can take it away like that. And Prabhupada even said once, when he, in the last months of his stay in this world, he said, an old man cannot be proud, because everything that we thought was better than others that we had, gradually, one by one, quickly or slowly, they're taken away. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had become humble. And Mahaprabhu, therefore, after defeating him based on the Vedanta Sutra, he had said that I've gotten some mercy by the mercy of Gopinathacharya, my subordinate younger brother-in-law, who was a devotee. And Mahaprabhu decided to show him his form as Radha and Krishna, as Lord Ram, and as a sannyasi. So he showed him 6-arm form. This was in chapter 6. And he went mad in ecstasy. This great teacher and he composed 100 verses in Sanskrit. Beautiful verses right there, describing the glories of Mahaprabhu. Have you ever seen those verses? So he knew Mahaprabhu's position. And he gave up completely his impersonal tendencies. And in an ecstasy, his consciousness completely shifted. And he was from then on, from that moment on, a full devotee of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So this was the person that Brahmananda Bharati had asked to mediate. And when he quoted, Brahmananda Bharati quoted Shastra, and this was all in the midst of a lighthearted discussion, really, serious but lighthearted at the same time. After hearing this, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya rendered his judgment, saying, Brahmananda Bharati, I see that you are victorious. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately said, I accept whatever Brahmananda Bharati has said. It is quite all right with me. So he accepted Brahmananda Bharati's judgment that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thus posed himself as a disciple and accepted Brahmananda Bharati as his spiritual master because he was senior. So Mahaprabhu followed the etiquettes. And he and Paramananda Puri and others they always stayed with Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri. And they were like the roots of the tree, just like the roots of a tree make the tree stable. If the roots are deep, the tree doesn't get knocked over even in a great wind. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami compares Brahmananda Bharati and the other sannyasis who accompany Mahaprabhu as the roots of the tree of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he stayed there with Mahaprabhu. From then on, the impersonalist became a great devotee. So, but Mahaprabhu treated him as his spiritual master because he was senior and he was probably an associate godbrother of his own sannyas guru, Keshav Bharati Maharaj. He then said, so Mahaprabhu said, I accept what Brahmananda Bharati said, and he said, the disciple is certainly defeated in an argument with the spiritual master. So he was trying, this is the sweetness of the culture. He's respecting him, and he's respecting him, and everyone is offering respect instead of trying to pull everyone else down, which is product of envy. Everyone is well-wisher. And Brahmananda Bharati immediately countered these words, saying, this is not the cause of your defeat. There is another cause. It is your natural characteristic to accept defeat at the hands of your devotee. That there is also another glory of yours, which I ask you to hear attentively. So he said, you are the Supreme Lord, and you get pleasure out of your devotee being more glorious than you. You get pleasure out of your devotee defeating you. You are the Supreme Lord, you are Krishna. But there's another reason that you have been defeated by me, and that you say that I have defeated by you. And here it is. I have been meditating on the impersonal Brahman since my birth. But since I have seen you, I have fully experienced Krishna. Brahmananda Bharati continued, and since I have seen you, I have been feeling Lord Krishna's presence in my mind, and I have been seeing him before my eyes. I now want to chant the holy name of Lord Krishna. Over and above this, within my heart, I consider you to be Krishna, and I am therefore very eager to serve you. A complete transformation just by being in the presence of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And then there's a quote from about Vilamangala Thakur. Vilamangala Thakur, a bandit who wrote the Krishna Caritamrta. Vilamangala Thakur abandoned his impersonal realization for the realization of the personality of Godhead. I now see that my condition is similar to his, for it has already changed. This is the power of association. I heard in one, I just happened to read something that of Prabhupada speaking in Indore, and probably, I can't remember the year, 1972 or 73. And someone asked the question of Prabhupada in a room conversation, does this mean that Brahmananda Bharati, he was changed so completely, so quickly? Does that mean that he had some bhakti in a previous life? And that was the reason for him to change? And Prabhupada said, no, it was that association of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And the power of association is one can change immediately. And that's what Brahmananda Bharati is saying. In your association, my whole life has changed. I was an impersonalist for my whole life. I was seeing Brahma. I was meditating on the oneness of everything. I had been meditating on controlling my mind and my senses. I've been internally focused. I've been seeing the oneness of everything and meditating on that because Krishna reciprocates with our desires. This was my intense desire, to see the oneness of everything. And I'd seen that and had been meditating on it. But in your presence, it's gone. And I'm seeing you as Krishna. And the holy names of Krishna are blossoming in my heart. And I want to chant Krishna's holy names. My condition is similar to Vilamangala Thakur, who saw Krishna personally, and my consciousness has already changed. So Prabhupada in his purports discusses impersonalism versus personalism. So Brahmananda Bharati continued, although I was worshipped by those on the path of monism. What's the path of monism? What is monism? Do you know?
It's like, it's not really God, like...
Well, yeah, but here, because we would say that we are a monotheistic religion, if we were talking in those terms, means that we don't, and there's monism and polytheism.
Yes, just one God.
One God, but this it means, in this particular case,
I think everything is right.
it's meaning that Advaita Viti, the path of monism. So although I was worshipped by those on the path of monism, the people saw me as so realized on this path. Those who are on the path of impersonalism, Advaita Vedanta, they saw me as an ideal, having realized what they were trying to realize. And I was initiated into self-realization through the yoga system. And I have nonetheless, have forcibly turned into a maid servant. This is a verse by Vilamangala Thakur that's quoted in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So he was saying as he said in the previous verse, my condition is the same as Vilamangala Thakur's. And here is the words of Vilamangala Thakur. Although I was worshipped by those on the path of monism and initiated into self-realization through the yoga system, I have nonetheless been forcibly turned into a maidservant by some cunning boy who was always joking with the gopis. So he saw Krishna, Vilamangala Thakur, when he was blind, staying in Vrindavan. Even though he was blind, he saw Krishna. And actually in one sense we could say, because Krishna is in everything and everywhere, and Krishna is the support of everything. There's no place where Krishna is absent from, because he's the absolute truth. So if one doesn't see Krishna, then one can say one's blind, one's not actually seeing. And that's what I heard this morning. I heard Prabhupada say in a morning walk. He was really chastising scientists, and he said they want to see things by looking through a microscope, but they're blind. So what will they see when they're looking through a microscope? Because they're blind. And ultimately what he meant is not only that our eyes are imperfect and the microscope is put together by someone who's imperfect. It's not perfect. It's always going to be some distortion. He wasn't taking that point of view. He was saying that you're not seeing Krishna. You can't see Krishna with these eyes that are blinded by Maya, by illusion. You can't see deeply enough. You can't get close enough. The microscope, through the power of the microscope, you see the object that is so small as if you were close to it. But if you're blind, what do you see? So it's the vision of Krishna that comes through bhakti. That is proper vision. That is real vision. That is seeing. Now, someone may answer that, well, that's just your religious belief. So that kind of a talk could get into something, a lot of logical arguments for how you're going to explain the existence of the world, that something comes from nothing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Where does it come from? Is there a prime mover, a creator? But we won't get into all those things unless someone really wants to. So he said, so Bilamangala Thakur says, my impersonal vision has been stolen away forcibly. I've been turned into a servant by some cunning boy who was always joking with the gopis, forcibly. But when he says forcibly, he means I can't help it because Krishna is so wonderful and I'm so attracted to him. Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu replied, you have a deep ecstatic love for Krishna. Therefore, wherever you turn your eyes, you simply heighten your Krishna consciousness. So they're complementing each other and not accepting one's own gifts or glory is this sweetness in dealings. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, the statements of both of you are correct. Krishna gives direct audience through his mercy. So one question can come up, Krishna forcibly stole away the consciousness of Bilamangala Thakur, and he gives direct audience of himself through his mercy. Why doesn't he give his mercy to me? Why doesn't he just give his mercy to everyone and just end this whole material bad dream where everyone is doomed, basically? Everyone, just a matter of time. Why doesn't he do it? Did you ever think like that? What was your answer to yourself when you thought like that?
He respects all free will.
Yeah, he respects our free will. Anyone else ever think like that? And what was their answer to their own thought? Mr. A.T.? No, you.
He's giving it.
Huh?
He's giving it. He's just not taking it.
But why doesn't he give it, well, he's forcibly here. Why doesn't he just give it so we don't have a choice? Wasn't, yeah, yes.
It was you're not ready to receive it, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's just not.
So why doesn't he
Make
force
them
us?
reject it, like they
Why doesn't he force us? Well, then you give it to Gopapu's point of free will. And but also there's a comment there's a one Bhagavad Gita verse where Krishna says, Tamaham Visatakuram Samsres, that I take those who have a demonic nature and I cast them down into lower and lower species of life. So our acharyas asked the question, well, you're the Supreme Lord, why don't you just save them instead of just casting them down into lower and lower species of life? And the acharyas answer on behalf of Krishna saying, because I don't want to. I don't have the inclination to do that. I mean, yeah. Nothing inspires me in their behavior or whatever to just give them mercy, and they don't want that mercy anyway. They have an enmity with me. Why should I just be merciful to them in that way? Better they learn in their own time, perhaps. So Krishna's also like that with us. We have to learn in our own ways, in our own time. But with devotees, he sort of guides the path, even of our difficulties, so that we learn the lessons that will turn us to him. Some are better students in a sense and will learn quicker than others. And some have already passed examinations previously. But the question is, instead of why doesn't Krishna, because in every relationship, there's two parts, what I'm doing and what the other person is doing. So usually the cause of strife in a relationship is when each person thinks about what the other person should be doing instead of what they should be doing, they themselves should be doing. So instead of asking, why doesn't Krishna act the way I think that he should act? I mean, we don't know what it's like being Krishna and what is the causes of his actions. They're always merciful and kind, but instead of immediately thinking of what Krishna should be doing in regard to giving mercy, we should think of what we should be doing about attracting Krishna's mercy to us and helping others as well, perhaps. A different way to look at things. Without having ecstatic love for Krishna, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya continues, one cannot see him directly. Therefore, through the mercy of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, Brahmananda Bharati has acquired direct vision of the Lord. If you have ecstatic love, you will see Krishna everywhere. And Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu said, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, what are you saying? Lord Vishnu, save me. Because he's in the mood of a devotee. Doesn't want to be pointed as the Supreme Lord. Such glorification is simply another form of blasphemy. Prabhupada says in the purport, the Lord herein confirms that if one is overestimated, glorification is just another form of blasphemy. If someone says, oh, you're the most beautiful person in the whole world, or something like that, and, well, I won't say that. But if someone says something like that and the person isn't at all like that, it's a criticism, not a compliment. So after saying this, after this exchange, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu took Brahmananda Bharati with him to his residence. From that time on to his, meaning his own residence. From that time on, Brahmananda Bharati remained with Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Just a few more verses, I'll finish the chapter. Later, Rambhadracharya and Bhagavanacharya joined them, and giving up all other responsibilities, remained under Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's shelter. The next day, Kasishwar Gosai also came and remained with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who received him with great respect. He was Govinda, they were both serving Sri Ishwar Puri, and Ishwar Puri had instructed them both to come and serve Mahaprabhu after his own demise. So Govinda had already come, and now Kasishwar, after visiting holy places, also had come. Kasishwar used to usher Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This was the service he performed. He would walk in front of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would enter the temple. He would precede the Lord into the crowd and keep the people from touching him. As all the rivers flow into the sea, all the devotees throughout the country finally came to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's shelter. Since all the devotees came to him for shelter, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed them all mercy and kept them under his protection. Now, did you hear that? I'll read it again. Since all the devotees came, you should change the ringtone. You should get, cow ringtones. They're really great. But no one will mind. But it's okay. That's jazzy. Since all the devotees came to him for shelter, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed them all mercy and kept them under his protection, showing mercy to each and every one of them. Sabhai Kripa Kori Sabhaya Rakila Nija Stane. He kept them under his protection, and he showed them all mercy. They'd come to him for shelter, and he accepted them and gave them all shelter. Thus I have described the meeting of all the Vaishnavas with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Whoever hears this description ultimately attains shelter at his lotus feet, Mahaprabhu's lotus feet. Sri Rupa Raghunatha Pade Yarasa Caitanya Caritamrta Kohe Krishna Das. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I Krishna Das narrate Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu following in their footsteps. I send the Bhaktivedanta purports to Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta Madhya-lila, 10th chapter, describing the Lord's meeting the Vaishnavas upon his return to Jagannath Puri from South India. And that was chapter 10, and Krishna willing, next week, chapter 11, which when it's called the Veda Kirtan, pastimes of Mahaprabhu, where Mahaprabhu will chant all around, Veda means all around the temple of Lord Jagannath. And all the devotees from Bengal come. Very exciting and interesting, their interactions. Because we heard that he gives everyone who comes to him shelter. So how is he going to interact with these devotees who come to him from Bengal? Just hearing they were his intimate associates, and they heard that he had returned after 2 years to Jagannath Puri, so they immediately came to see him from Bengal. And I found out, I just happened to read, I can't remember exactly where, but how long it took them to walk from Navadvip to Jagannath Puri. Because usually I was saying 2 weeks, but it actually took them 1 month, and then 1 month there and 1 month back. So thank you very much. Oops, it's late. 1 minute's worth of questions, if anyone has a easy to answer question. Yes.
Well, you were saying that Lord Chaitanya came back after visiting South India for 2 years?
He traveled for 2 years in South India, then he came back to Jagannath Puri.
I not mistaken, when you do the gallery tour, it says, and I've also heard it, that he's travelled around for 6 years. So it's another time that he travelled as well?
That was after he took sannyas. He traveled for 6 years before not going back to Jagannath Puri and not leaving again after that. So he actually made 3 trips. This one, 2 years around South India. Then he went to Bengal and came back. And then he went to Vrindavan and came back, passing through Benares and Prayag. Went to Vrindavan and came back. And then he also stayed in Jagannath Puri in that time for several years. So altogether it came to 6 years. But this trip to South India was 2 years. Hare Krishna. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Caitanya Caritamrta ki jai, Shri Prabhupada Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Shri Prabhupada Bhaktivinoda ki jai.